I have the pleasure of introducing the next two speakers. The first, they're both enjoying each other's company in the back there, so maybe Paul Hayes can give them a little tap too. There we go, thank you. The first of our speakers, and they can come up together one at a time, is Dale Schultz. He is a former Wisconsin Republican state legislator representing District 17 beginning in 1982 through 1991 in the Wisconsin State Assembly, and then from 1990 to 2015 in the Wisconsin Senate. Senator Schultz served as the Senate Majority Leader in 2003 and 2005. Schultz just recently announced his retirement from the Senate following the 2014 session. We feel fortunate that Senator Schultz is here with us today to share his insights and wisdom he has gained over his 32 years of service as a Wisconsin legislator. And the other speaker, who I don't know if you'll be coming up together or if you want to have John go first, is John Torinus. John Torinus has worked as a journalist, entrepreneur, and business manager. He served 20 years as CEO of Wisconsin-based Serigraph Inc., a graphic parts manufacturer with ownership in 10 plants in the United States, Mexico, China, and India, and continues to serve as its active chairman. In addition to his tenure as chairman of the Wisconsin chapter of Nature Conservancy, Mr. Torinus has served as business editor and columnist at the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, as well as his hometown paper, The Daily News in West Bend, Wisconsin, where he has served as editor and general manager for 11 years. Thank you both for joining us today. Ms. John, would you like to come up first? Very good, thank you.
I didn't know Dale before, and we're getting to know each other, but we're not talking about the environment. We're talking about retriever dogs and pheasant hunting. I think the reason I was invited here today, because I was I do have a cabin near Clam Lake, the center of the wolf world, and I know Mr. Adrian Weideman is my neighbor, so I'm familiar with the issues, but it's not the center of my life. I think I was invited here because I'm a businessman and an environmentalist, and sometimes that sounds like they don't fit. But I've expressed myself in a blog that I write that I object majorly to how environmental policy is being shaped in Wisconsin of late. It's a departure from a long, long tradition of bipartisan interaction and interaction with the public on shaping of environmental and conservation issues. And we're departing from that. I call the latest policy-making expeditions government by surprise, even government by sucker punch. No one knew, because no candidate for office telegraphed in their campaigns in 2014 that they were going to zero out the stewardship fund or that they were going to disempower the NRB board. No one knew. Had they known, I think a lot of people would have voted differently. The reaction to both stealth initiatives, which came out of the governor's staff office, who are the faceless guys who are running the government while the governor was in other states, the reaction was swift and furious, and the DNR board provision was completely reversed, and the stewardship elimination was restored by about 2/3 of the previous amount. I give the GOP legislators credit for standing up to Governor and his staff on those issues. They were honoring that bipartisan tradition of conservation management and funding in Wisconsin. They would have made a major political mistake if they had listened to Senator Tom Tiffany, who seems to be becoming the negative face of the Republican Party on conservation and environmental issues. He is out of step completely with every poll that I've ever seen on conservation and environmental issues in Wisconsin. Way out of step. By the way, I don't know how anybody runs for President of the United States on an anti-conservation platform. Let me Again, because I come from a little different part of the world than most of you in the audience, let me frame a more positive political, economic, and business approach to managing the relationship of all of us with our most valuable state asset. And by that I mean our natural resources, our lakes, rivers, swamps, our lands, and our air. And I want to start with a couple anecdotes and a speech excerpt. The anecdotes are these. When I was 18 years old, I grew up in De Pere, Wisconsin. I jumped into the Fox River for a swim on a hot summer day, and a piece of human waste floated by, and I jumped out of that river as fast as I could, and I've never been back in it. The second one is I moved to West Bend to turn the paper into a daily newspaper in 1969 and compete with Mr. Paul Hayes at the Journal, which we did very successfully, Paul. The Milwaukee River that flows through West Bend, the West Bend of the Milwaukee River, was a sewer. The Kewaskum Municipal Plant upstream was primary treatment only. There were multiple outlets from the industries in town. I took a canoe up the river, and pipes were coming into the river everywhere, and it was a terrible, terrible situation. Today, flash forward, because of the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act, by the way, both bipartisan pieces of legislation signed by Republican presidents. Because of those acts, those two rivers are now swimmable and fishable again. That happened in my lifetime. I'm extremely proud of that. What we've done as citizens in a collaborative way, the work with local government, state government, federal government, citizens, businesses, we clean those rivers up. It's still going on. They're still taking the PCBs out of the Fox River. It's the biggest dredging project in the history of humankind, $1 billion project. But you can swim in those rivers again, and you can fish in them again. So those are my anecdotes that sort of shape my approach to these issues. The speech was a speech that my son gave in 2013 when my company, Serigraph, we're a manufacturing company. We have about 600 people in West Bend, 5 plants. And we make decorative parts. You get in your car, we make the face of your instrument cluster. You buy a Whirlpool clothes washer, we make the control panel. So my son was giving a speech because DNR Secretary Stepp was there to co-sign a Green Tier 2 contract. And there are only 2 companies in the state that have achieved that level. Essentially what happens is the company agrees to some very ambitious environmental goals, far beyond the minimum standards required by law or regs at the state or federal level, in return for less micro-regulation. In other words, they set the standards, we set common goals, and they let us figure out how to do it. My son started the speech by saying, I've been to China 12 times, I've been to Beijing a half a dozen times, I've never seen the sun in Beijing. And my collar gets dirty by noon. So he said, we don't want to live that way. It happened to be a sunny, beautiful day in Wisconsin. The air was clean. And he said, this is how we want to live. We don't want to live like that. Therefore, we at Serigraph support tough, high, ambitious environmental standards. So those personal experiences sort of shaped my philosophy. So we at Serigraph have long believed, I call it my green and gold philosophy. You get the appropriateness of those colors in Wisconsin. But my green and gold, it means that the economy and the environment move forward together, by and large. They are not at odds, they move forward in concert. So the payoffs for investing in our natural resources and protecting our natural resources are long-term. But for one, as a capitalist, we need to do it because we need to be in good standing with the populace of this country. We need to be good actors. So it's a good long-term proposition for businesses like mine to do the right thing by our environment. We subscribe completely to Gaylord Nelson's theory that the economy is a wholly owned subsidiary of the environment. But we also add an amendment that says the environment can be improved a lot faster if the economy is healthy and growing. If the dollars are there and the profits are there, then we can have the resources to help our natural resources. I'll just go micro for a minute. We do everything we can do at Serigraph to be a green company. And so we have this Green Tier 2 contract. We're one of only two in the state that have done it. It took me 6 years to get it, by the way. You have to apply for it. You mutually set the goals with the government, both the DNR and the EPA at the federal level, and then they have to sign off on the micro regulation. We were regulated at 3 levels. We have a cap, we're a printer, ergo the solvents evaporate off, so air emissions are our issue. The bureaucrats then have to sign off on letting it. They were regulating our ink levels. Every time we bought a piece of equipment, we had to get it regulated and permitted, and then there was a cap on the plant. So they agreed to finally decided that we knew more about buying equipment that would accomplish the cap goal than they did. We're in the business. So we finally got those relaxations, but it took 6 years. 6 years. And everything we were doing was moving towards lowering the emissions. In one example, we moved towards UV curing, ultraviolet curing, as opposed to conventional inks. A conventional ink is a pigment carried in a solvent. Solvent evaporates off, they're petrochemicals, causes a volatile organic compound. UV ink is VOC free. There are no emissions. And yet whenever we went in for a permit, it would take us 90 days and $15,000 to replace an old solvent press with a new UV press. Silly, right? So we're moving to UV curing. We've got about 50% of our production is now VOC free. And then, to get the rest of it, we created a biofilter. And believe it or not, when we built our plant in 2006, we have an addition on the plant. It's about half the size of a football field. It's got a filter bed 5 feet deep. It's wood chips and, believe it or not, horse manure. And those little microorganisms, we take all the air emissions out of our printing plant, feed them through the biofilter, and we get a 91% removal of 25 different petrochemicals. It works like a champ. So we've used advanced technology, we're pioneers on both of those technologies, to make rapid advancements in our environmental performance. We've done a lot of other things. We've redone all the lights to make them efficient. We have a sediment pond to capture our sediments, our runoffs before they go to the Milwaukee River. We have cut our water usage from 4 million gallons to 2 million gallons. We've got interruptible power so that when they need it, we don't use power in the peak demands, so they can invest less money in the plants and burn less coal. We have walking paths. We have a prairie that has 50 of Wisconsin's wildflowers in it. It's absolutely beautiful. So we do about everything you can think of to minimize our impact on the environment. So, and if you'll notice, we did all those things in a collaborative way. We worked with local government, we worked with state government, we worked with the EPA, we worked with universities, for instance, to develop the technologies, and we worked, of course, with local businesses and vendors to put this stuff together. So it was a collaborative process. So what I'm suggesting you today is that the collaborative model is a better model for resolving human issues, complicated human issues, than the old adversarial model. So I say to the Democrats, the old command and control model, the model of prosecuting companies, the model that looks at every company as a bad actor, is outdated. It's run its course. It only gets the minimal standards. We need to do better. We need to have far more ambitious goals. And I say to the Republicans, if you think that your business backers, guys like me, want to see environmental standards lower, you're absolutely wrong. Almost every business guy I know is proud of running a green business, and sure, there are some bad actors out there. There's bad actors in every field. But by and large, the land trusts in the state of Wisconsin are populated with Republican business guys who move and shake and raise the dough. So most businessmen I know are environmentalists and conservationists. So then I remember back to my days in graduate school. I went to the University of Stockholm for a master's in political science, and I studied the Swedish system. They had something called the Remis system. And any time you had a major initiative in Swedish public policy, all parties from all sides of the aisle all constituencies affected, were pulled into a process called the REMIS system, and they co-developed these policy advances in the Swedish society. They'd get the buy-in on a compromise basis from everybody before moving ahead. That's sort of the tradition we've had in Wisconsin over many, many decades. We're losing it. I suggest that we go back to something, that collaborative process, which at the end of the day, a collaborative process is almost bipartisan by nature. We need to move back in that direction and do it the right way. There is a better path. Thanks. Dale?